By the time we implemented our ERP, it was already, we're a pretty rich country. We could afford to put in all these fancy gantries. But the ALS with the I don't know if our students here, have you seen that piece of paper they put onto your windscreen? That's a very, very cheap system, cheap but effective, right? And then that was one way of managing, but we also, with our planning, decentralizing, and also creating all these different centers to try to create different nodes so that our cars would all not converge to the city center that was introduced in 1991. I could have placed another dot, 2013, but I didn't have the time to do it. That's where this wonderful plan of 700 kilometers of bikeways, etc. But having shown you all this, yeah, okay, this is one. I also want to show you this newspaper cutting that of Tuesday's newspaper. And if you're wondering what is in the red box, see. Former transport ministers Ma Bao Tan and Yeo Cheong Tong outlined ambitious rail projects during their term. Mr. Yeo told Parliament in 2000 that Singapore would have 540 kilometers of rail lines by 2030. But only now are some of these projects being built, and we will have only 360 km of rail by 2030. A plan in 1997 to upgrade the signaling system of North-South and East-West MRT lines, which would have allowed trains to run at closer intervals, will be completed only in 2018, etc., etc. All this to say that even in our Singapore, where you have one single government, I'll show you later, in China there's 5 levels, one level of government, longevity of government, accountability, etc., 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 you can still have these disjunctures. You can still find this. So, in other countries where we are all now reminded that we're still having a debate in the US whether to lift the debt ceiling, in other countries with the frequent change of national and municipal governments and that lack of continuity, it is very difficult to put in place the kind of policy that we saw earlier on that I show you in transports. In some countries, as Koon has shown you, Mrs. Cheong has shown you, multi-level, multi-tiered government. In China, is often 5 levels, yeah? From the national, provincial, municipal, district to county levels. And all these different levels may have different agendas, different interests. And also we like to pride ourselves and say we have a whole of government approach in Singapore, right? WOG. In many countries, the ministries don't see eye to eye. There are a lot of differences, and your interest is not my interest, and your agenda is not my agenda, so it's very difficult. And in talking about population growth, we are a city-state with definite boundaries, and we're a sovereign nation, and we can control migration, very simply by, as you have seen now, by making it more difficult for this influx of migrants. If you look at the population increase in Singapore versus some of the cities around us, Hong Kong has approximately the same kind of situation. It's not so easy to get into Hong Kong. There's a big debate on what population they should have, and they have a stringent immigration policy there. But cities like Seoul, Taipei, Manila, Jakarta, all these are very different, or Mumbai. They are cities within a country, right? There's no migration control. The more successful you are, the more problems you have. Everybody wants to come to your city, right? So if you look at Seoul, and all these figures, take them with a pinch of salt, because it's very difficult to actually know the population of a city. Depending on how you draw the boundary, it's a very slippery number. I remember discussing with the chief planner of Shenzhen. I said, do you have 8 million now? He said, who knows? Maybe 10 million, maybe 12 million, or maybe even 16 million. 16 million is double 8 million. He said, who knows? So, but anyways, if you look at this chart here, Singapore population has sort of grown by 2.8 times. Hong Kong, slightly less. But a lot of Taipei, I put Taipei there, 2 figures, because again, how you draw the boundary. A lot of people are living within the greater Taipei area because they can't afford Taipei, right? But they're really living within the greater Taipei area. So if you look at the number of times of growth, it's probably closer to 4 or 5. And so all this to say that it's very difficult in cities that cannot control their population like us to plan as effectively and as have an environment as livable as the one that we have. Look at Seoul. Just to show you the metropolitan area and the municipality of Seoul. The whole of metropolitan area has half the population of Korea living around Seoul. So the result is you see cities in India with horrendous slums because of this rural-urban migration, because they want to eke out a better living in the cities, and you cannot control your boundaries. So this is what you see. Tokyo, endless sprawl. Taipei. Where is this? This is Ho Chi Minh City. Well, so I think for all those reasons, it is very difficult for us to be a model city. Thank you.
Professor Heng's answer to the question is that Singapore is not a model city because other cities can't replicate our experience. But I have a question for you. Your survey of Bedok, I was very puzzled by the high number of spas. The citizens of Bedok must be the most massaged people in Singapore. The final speaker of the forum is Professor Ian Smith, and thank you, Ian, for joining us. Professor Smith is a faculty member of the great Swiss university ETZ. He's in Singapore as a principal investigator of the Future Cities Laboratory, which is owned by the National Research Foundation. His office is next door to us in this enormous building called CREATE. Ian, you have the floor.
Good evening. Well, we've only got, in order to keep to the schedule, 2 minutes. And I anticipated this. I didn't even bring any slides. I knew this was going to happen. And I'm not going to show you the same slide for the 4th time. I'm not even going to talk about that. But Model City, so I'm told from Tommy Koh that the students thought up Model City. How many students, who are the students here tonight? Pick up your hand. All the students. Come on, pick up your hand. All right, so about half. That's pretty good. How many people, when you said Model City, thought of fashion TV? Naomi Campbell. Am I the only person here with a twisted mind? But what I'm trying to get to you, what I'm trying to open up the discussion, is that it all depends on context. If you look in the dictionary, model says a scaled replica. Well, Singapore is not a scaled replica of a city, it's a real city. It's only when you get down into the sub-definitions of the word model, you start to get to what's something that we've heard tonight, fabulous talks. I'm not even going to try to go there. That's great. I learned a lot, and I respect Singapore even more now than I did before I walked in. But somehow I don't think you really meant fashion TV to like Singapore. You know, if that was the case, the person talking here in front of you right now would be much better looking. Tommy would have never chosen me. But just to say, I'm not going to say anymore. I think it's better to get to questions and answers. But I think you want to think about context, and you think about what people mean by model. There's some special interest groups, there's some society groups that might think Singapore is not at all a model for the world. And I think it's important to talk about that. I think it was great to hear the last speaker because we really have a debate going, and that's good. But it can be very wide. It can be very wide. And it really all depends whether you're Naomi Campbell or you're